Welcome back to the Rhine Report. This is Stuart Rhine. Today's subject matter is, as in the title, the abject downfall of American democracy, subtitled A Rant on How a Perfect Storm Has Led Us into Totalitarianism. It wasn't just this frenzied mass of 20,000 Nazis and neo-Nazis at Madison Square Garden in 1939 America, but also clandestine ideologues, industrialists, and men like billionaire Henry Ford, and huge corporate interests, as well as national heroes like Charles Lindbergh, who were funding, supporting, and an important part of a Nazi Bund movement in America, lauding Hitler and hating on Jewish people. So, let's get up to date. My initial discovery of an obscure Marty Lederman amicus brief in Trump versus Illinois and my analysis of it led to my prediction of our probable win in the case. It was irresistible. Sadly, and incidentally, all others on social media and in the legacy press had completely missed it, while I was certain it would defeat the rogue majority 6 of SCOTUS and Trump on the question of his unlawful deployment of troops in Illinois. To make matters worse, these various voices then lauded the decision, hailing it as a great victory, while ignoring and or misinterpreting Chief Justice Roberts' opinion, in which he virtually blueprinted how Trump could go back to the drawing board in such a manner as to validate the deployment of troops using an alternative statute, and he did so without ever directly mentioning the Insurrection Act. Leaving all that to one side, I want to now discuss, in the aftermath of Trump versus Illinois, the state of play in relation to our chances of salvaging our democracy under the present set of dire circumstances that define totalitarian government as expressed and demonstrated through the Trump regime's control over the real levers of power. Also, I want to commend an article in The Guardian by David Smith, which outlines all of the Trump regime's unlawful, or at least most of them, and unconstitutional policies, proclamations, edicts, and fake executive orders, although I strongly disagree with David's conclusions that, and I'm quoting him here, as Americans tire of Donald Trump, a Democratic midterm tsunami could sweep the GOP out of power. Okay, so what is my analysis and perspective? In 11 months, Trump, under orders from his keepers, has signed 225 executive orders, 56 memorandums, and 114 proclamations. Many of these mirror proposals from the fascist ultra-conservative Project 2025 policy document, and have been met with significant legal challenges that seem to never end, and the lower court's interim orders often fail when they reach SCOTUS on their emergency docket, their shadow docket, and favor Trump. I'm going to leave a link to the article itself on my channel in the subtitles text. As I have said, it all begins with a perfect storm, created first with a Supreme Court decision granting Trump an absolute immunity against prosecution for crimes he might commit in office, right in the middle of a time in which he was being actively prosecuted for obstruction of justice in the Mar-a-Lago theft of government documents case, and in a separate trial for having engineered and leading an insurrection on January 6, 2020. Following the infamous SCOTUS 6 decision, we had an election in which 77 million morons, discontents, sociopaths, passive-aggressives with a predisposition to be led by a felon and sexual predator, housewives with rape fantasies and others, voted this evil lunatic into office remarkably against their own self-interests. We can't blame the oligarchs for this, can we? However, I'm not going to regurgitate all the policies, unlawful extensions of executive power, cruel and inhumane actions that the Nazi Trump regime has and is committing, because you are all too familiar with them. Instead, I'll discuss David Smith's and many others' belief that Trump is losing support and that his forces will be trounced in the 2026 election cycle, bringing the House back under Democratic control. For any number of reasons, this is nothing more than foolish, false optimism. It's not based on the facts of the moment. Trump's hardline and hardcore support has never really wavered. It's always been in the high 30s. Second, he has nonetheless won 2 out of 3 elections. And then again, he can largely ignore the Congress, however constituted, altogether, especially if split and therefore ineffective, and continue to operate and govern by these horrific proclamations, edicts, executive orders, etc., and his now expansive executive powers thanks to SCOTUS. There are many rogue and unconstitutional rulings. Moreover, he might not even lose these 2026 elections if he is successful in rigging them, using state media propaganda to claim successes, influencing the masses' judgments, gerrymandering the voting in selected states, the seizure of voting machines, imposing voting restrictions with identity laws, and of course redeploying federalized National Guards and military back into our streets by invoking what? The Insurrection Act. And this to frighten, harass, and interfere with the election process itself, as well as threatening election officials with fake prosecutions, while also initiating frivolous litigations as he has done previously. Now, even if all else fails, he can and will cancel all elections, claiming a concocted national emergency and or national crisis, declaring it by proclamation, and following that up with our well-known Insurrection Act, using various allegations and prior authorizations that he has previously devised and concocted, such as overwhelming crime, a war in Venezuela or elsewhere, it could be Nigeria, or a war against the narco-terrorists, mass violent protests in the streets, and a mere interference by groups with federal law, obstructions, and other such nonsensical pretexts and excuses. And one has to bear in mind that he will be granted enormous judicial deference in his accusations. Trump will not relinquish power easily or at all. And just remember that he and his puppeteers control all of the levers of power, and control which has the backing of a traitorous Supreme Court majority 6, the military, the Justice Department, and the FBI, as well as his own private army of ICE agents at Homeland Security. You know, just as democracy ended in Athens after about 250 years, so it might have already been ended in America. Thanks for watching. Please remember to subscribe, hit a like, make a comment, whatever. Let's try to grow this small independent channel.